It's 1986, cell phones are as big as bricks, and Disney is deciding whether it should kill its business model. And no, it's somehow not killing this public service announcement on bus safety with these absolutely terrifying Winnie the Pooh characters. At stake was not only hundreds of millions of dollars, but Disney's very business model and the brand itself. And a hero in this entire saga is a very simple economics equation. But to understand what's going on in 1986, we need to go back to an animated movie released in 1950. Now, Disney had been in the animated feature film business since 1937 when it released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Then Disney followed up on that with some classics: Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, and of course, Saludos Amigos. To be honest, I didn't even know what that last one was, and I actually had to do multiple takes of me pronouncing the title. Saludos. It turns out it's a movie about Donald Duck and Goofy going on a cultural tour of South America. And if that doesn't sound like a pitch for a multi-million-dollar blockbuster movie and something you certainly aren't going to regret in 70 years, I don't know what is. Saludos Amigos was the first in a string of animated feature films that are no longer household names. But then came 1950, when Disney released what would become its crown jewel. The movie's success saved a studio that was financially on the brink. It wooed audiences so much that Disney incorporated its symbols into its branding. 1950 was the year the world first saw Cinderella. After a string of forgettable movies, having a hit was a relief. And that's what inspires Disney to think of a new business model. The new model was going to solve a massive problem in the Disney ecosystem. Imagine what it was like to see a Disney movie back then. You come home from the theater thinking about the great movie you just watched, but then you look at your baby and think, will she ever get to see that? As the years go on, your child ages and enjoys her life, but you never know if the next Disney movie is going to be as good as Cinderella. Then, 7 years after you saw the movie, Disney announces the game changer. Cinderella is coming back to theaters for a limited run. This strategy made a ton of sense. Making an animated movie is super expensive, but once it's already made, distributing the movie is relatively cheap. So from Disney's perspective, you can worry about creating the next hit, or you can just re-release an old one. New kids get to see the movie for the first time, parents get to see a movie they love. Disney is basically pioneering that nostalgia-driven cinema that is just dominating theaters today. So Disney developed a new strategy, re-releasing its hits every 7 to 8 years to cash in on those profits. But a technological advancement in the 1980s started to challenge this model. So, what do you think? What is that? It's me recreating the iconic first scene from The Sound of Music, because, you know, The Sound of Music was one of the first feature films released on VHS. It's probably what got Disney thinking about releasing movies on VHS. No, I understood that part. I mean, what is that? Oh, that? It's a VCR. No, it's a cardboard box. It says VCR on it. You can even put a tape in it. Okay, it's not a VCR, but do you know how hard it was just to find a VHS tape for this bit? How in the world was I going to find a VCR? Plus, most of my viewers haven't even seen a VCR before. They're not gonna know the difference. We definitely have viewers who have seen a VCR in real life. Well, then I'll just tell them to subscribe if they've seen a VCR before. Okay, but what about the ones that haven't? I'll ask them to subscribe too. Do you really have to include this part in The Sound of Music was one of the most successful box office hits in history, and it was bringing in millions of dollars through television broadcasts. But now it's going to be available to everyone to watch anytime they wanted on VHS. So Disney had to be thinking, is this something it should be doing itself? One Disney employee thought it should, and in 1986, Bill Mechanic approached the Disney executives about releasing Cinderella on VHS. Making a video available for anyone to watch at any time would kill a very important part of Disney's business model. Once you had that on VHS, there was no point to re-releasing the movie every 7 to 8 years. Was releasing a video on VHS worth sacrificing that very important and profitable part of Disney's business model? And how could Disney know which one was more valuable? What would happen if Disney stayed the course and did not release a VHS? Well, it would keep releasing Cinderella every 7 years and make millions of dollars. In fact, the executives calculated that over the next 28 years, they could release it 4 times and earn $125 million. On the other hand, if Disney sold the VHS today, it would make some money today, but that $125 million would be gone. So the two questions were, how much money would it make today? And would that be enough to compensate for losing the $125 million? How do we even compare money that comes 28 years in the future versus money we have today? Well, this is the economic equation that lets us make that comparison. But what does it mean? If I have the choice of getting $10 today or $10 in 28 years, it's an easy answer. If it's the same amount, I'd rather have it today than wait. In fact, I'd probably prefer $10 today than $20 in 28 years. Who knows what will happen over those years, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. But how much money would I need to get in 28 years to give up that $10 today? Well, if I take that $10 and put it under my bed, I'll still have $10 in 28 years. But if I take that $10 and put it in a savings account with a 6% interest rate, then in 28 years, I would have $51. That means if in 28 years I can't get at least $51, then I should just take the $10 today and stick it in a savings account. If we take that logic to this problem, then you could have $125 million in 28 years at a 6% interest rate if you started with $25 million today. So the Cinderella VHS had to make at least $25 million to compensate for the loss of future revenue. But at the time, VHS was super expensive. The Sound of Music was selling for $70 per tape. And that's $70 in 1977 money. That's not $70 today. Like, that was very expensive. Was it even plausible that they could sell enough of these to make $25 million? Fortunately, Bill Mechanic, this Disney employee, had already tried an experiment to see if they could make that money. He released the original Pinocchio on VHS and sold it for $70 a pop. And it was a bigger flop than the Pinocchio remake. And of course nobody bought it. You had to be Scrooge McDuck to afford this thing. But since the tapes already existed and selling some was better than selling none, he decided to cut the price down to $30. It made $32 million. Now, if Pinocchio could make that much, surely the way more popular Cinderella would easily pass that $25 million threshold. But there was another concern. How would this affect the Disney brand? Disney executives were worried that part of the magic of a Disney movie was that there was time between being able to see it. Letting people watch the movie whenever they wanted might dilute the brand, which might not be worth that extra revenue today. They decided to release another movie that was similar to Cinderella, but not as popular. And if this one succeeded, it would give them a much better idea of whether this was a valuable proposition. In 1986, Disney released the VHS for Sleeping Beauty, which was ironically considered Cinderella's less impressive stepsister. It sold 3 million tapes for $90 million. That kind of money might be worth diluting the brand. Clearly, we live in the future and we already know Disney released Cinderella on VHS. But how much did it make? I'll get to that in just a second, but I just want to point out how this formula was the same formula that created Disney Plus. Instead of launching its own competing streaming service, Disney could have sold the rights to its movies to a streaming service like Netflix. Netflix was willing to pay $500 million to stream Seinfeld for 5 years. Surely Disney's catalog could have brought way more than that. So Disney looked at the money it could have made from selling to streaming services, and then looked at what it could make from monthly subscription fees and having the whole catalog under its control and all the other benefits that would come in a stream of income for the next 28 years. And they decided that the future value of that revenue was more valuable than getting the current money from selling to other services. In fact, former CEO Bob Iger compared selling the content to giving the competition nuclear weapons. The decision completely flipped. So back to 1986. Remember, Cinderella needed to make at least $25 million to compensate for the $125 million it was going to make over the next 28 years. When the VHS went to market, it sold 6 million copies at $30 per tape, which gets them $180 million in 1986 alone. Plus, right before releasing the VHS, they re-released the movie in theaters and made another $34 million, which at 6% interest over the next 28 years meant that Cinderella alone made $1 billion. It's awesome when applying economics makes you tons of money in a risky business decision. But if you want to see somebody lose a ton of money because of economics, you need to check out this video about a company that lost $125,000 on a bet about the last Harry Potter book. It will make you seriously reconsider gambling.